Thank you so much. Um, that was great to hear about sort of the success of the school. Kareem, I want to ask you, in going into like this idea of more of structured literacy, what are you looking at a curriculum? I mean, obviously it's supporting these students who are dyslexic, but as you both have talked about, it's really across the board. This is going to help all students. How do we what do you think is this sort of, how do we get the right curriculum into all public schools so that it works for everyone and supports our dyslexic learners?
Sure. So first of all, I put my cards back there by the computers. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can just pick one up and it's all good. So curriculum, and I know not everyone here is from California, people from all over, but usually the State Department has something to say about it. There's a list, and these publishers get their curriculum on a list, but it's a bureaucratic checklist. There's all these advocacy groups that say, we got to have this, we got to have that, we got to have this. And so what ends up happening is the publishers just throw everything in there so that they can get checks on the list so that they can get their thing approved. Problem with that, though, is that in the classroom, you have this big monstrosity of a program that's bloated, that checks all the boxes, but it's largely unusable. You've got to make sure at the district level, at the school level, that what you're using can be fully implemented within the bounds of whatever the structure is, whatever the contract is, the planning time, whatever. Teachers have to be able to plan for full implementation. The students we're talking about, there's a lot of, so neurodivergence isn't just dyslexia, but let's just focus on dyslexia right now. They need full implementation, not Swiss cheese. So you can't expect to half skip and jump around something and get results. You've got to be able to fully do the thing. So you've got to be able to plan for full implementation consistently. Now, that's assuming the materials are good in the first place, right? So do they have evidence of results? This is common sense stuff. You can be in education so long that common sense just kind of goes out the window. But does it work? Is there evidence that it works? Can you fully implement it within your contract bounds? Forget the rest of the rubric. If those two answers aren't yes, it's a fool's errand. Does it work? Can you fully implement it? Right? Because otherwise, if you don't have the structure to support it and fully implement it, let's say, for example, you don't have the planning time or the prep time for your teachers, then officially the plan is that you hope the teachers on their own will prepare and plan every day at home and on the car or wherever. I love hope, but that's not a strategy, right? Our kids need consistent access to high quality instruction that's for full implementation, and that takes planning and intentionality.
And a holistic approach. As you say, like it's, I think sometimes people look at, teachers are not, implementing this. But you say in the film, there's a quote from you that says, I think many of us who got our master's and our degree in teaching, we deserve a refund.
Oh yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about what that statement.
It says just what it is. Like that. I'm a straight shooter. We pay our money to go to these schools, tuition for graduate school or whatever, when we get our license, our credential and everything. That's all fine. You got to have a certification process. But when I step into the classroom, I cannot teach a child to read, what was it all for? I mean, really, because at the end of the day, most kids, that is the number 2 issue. The first one is safety. And that's really what parents want. Keep my child safe, teach them how to read. Everything else we can talk about later, everything. But we gotta have those too. And so graduate school, now this is the same thing the Department of Justice said 30 years ago. The Department of Justice talked about higher education being derelict in terms of teaching children to read. And the jails said that poor reading is not just a correlate, it's a cause of incarceration. Which means this isn't just a relationship. Some of you stats folks, this is Stanford, so I know there's some stats people in here. It's not just a relationship. This is the reason why they're in here. It's what the prisons say. So anyway, we have to make sure that people coming out of these schools of higher education actually have the skills they need, along with the materials and the structures that would support them implementing those things consistently.
And, you know, where are you, you've been in this work for decades.
Wait, hold on 1 second, Ann. Hold on 1 second. If you're a teacher, it is a betrayal that you go into the school with the best of intentions and they did not teach you the most fundamental thing you need to serve children. That is a betrayal. That's like taking a driver's ed class and them not teaching you how to drive or where the steering wheel is. You can't think of that in any other profession, right? So when I say we deserve a refund, it's because teachers, at the heart of teaching is a love of children and wanting them to progress, be healthy. But if we can't do the thing that we paid to learn how to do, what was it all for? I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's what the sentiment is behind that. It's just not right. So I do think that we deserve a refund. If the schools didn't deliver what they said they were going to deliver, then what are we supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think this whole issue is, when I first, got involved and understood the issue, it just was, to me, such an injustice, such an injustice to all of these kids, everywhere. And it's, as you said, it's, if a child is struggling, they need help, they need glasses, we're going to get them tested and we are going to get them glasses so that they can learn how to read. And that's what's sort of happening here. I mean, even the barrier to diagnosis is so great. And it's a point you brought up in the film. There's, a woman, Fatima, who is a mom. Her 8-year-old son can't read or write, and she's been pleading with the Department of Education, pleading with our schools, please get him tested. I think something is wrong. I think something's up. And, they just constantly push her aside. It's fine. It's fine. In order for him to be diagnosed with dyslexia, we would have to show that he was in a, proper environment, a learning environment that he can learn how to read. He'd been in school for 4 years already by that point. And, that's what's sort of happening. I see, and then I got to imagine, obviously, Naomi and Kareem, you see this all of the time too, that there, are parents just struggling. You as a parent struggled. Naomi, I did. To get your child recognized for the challenge that they are facing.
Make me upset up here. So, and Naomi, you feel free to jump in because you mentioned this a little bit too when you were talking before about how much it costs to get kids screening. Could you say a little bit more about that? I mean, I'll jump in afterwards, but can you talk about that?
Yeah. So to get a child screened, the first thing you need to know is that there's a problem. And when I started this journey, when I started being a parent, and I was just kept being told that it takes time and it'll get better. By the time I had my second kid, I had a school social worker tell me that she assessed my kid. He was in first grade, and she said, "I observed your child. He's fine. He can cut really well." And I was like, "What does cutting paper have to do with reading?" And she's like, "Well, Mom, I just think you're overreacting and you need to calm down." And she's like, just which, I'm a Latina through and through. You tell me to calm down, that's like a curse word to me. So I'm going to turn it right up. And she was like, just because your first son is dyslexic does not mean he's dyslexic. And some kids just don't know how to read past the 3rd grade, and they'll get better. They'll figure it out by then, which in New York City means it's like hard because you start testing. New York State does testing in the 3rd grade. So so first you need to know there's a problem. Then you need to get people to address that there's a problem. So they need to be able to ask for a recommendation to evaluate. Oftentimes, the school system as it is does not diagnose. They're not allowed to diagnose. So they will screen your child and say, well, they might have these issues. Let's throw a little bit of speech therapy over here. Let's throw a little bit of occupational therapy over here. but they can't name what it is. So at least I had the foresight to seek outside of the system. I spoke to my pediatrician, and we were able to get some of the preliminary screenings out of the way privately, which helped when it came down to getting some supportive service with an actual diagnosis helped. But once it came up that I had a dyslexia diagnosis, it meant nothing because what he needed was structural literacy. And of course, I became that mom. I literally became labeled that mom who was at nauseum talking about the things that they needed, because it's more than one. And I'm being told repeatedly, no one has that, and you just need to do this thing. So if you do the thing and nothing happens, then you have to get legal. So you have to first know who to contact. Thank God for my network of people that I know. They guided me to some consultants who were willing not to charge me at all, just to talk to me. So they gave me sort of some ideas and some people to talk to. So I was able to talk to a couple of attorneys. And through that, I landed with the current attorney I have, who said, okay, attorney's not going to take a case they can't win. So that there's a legal retainer I have to pay every year. But then she's like, you need to get a neuropsych if you want to go to these private schools as a prerequisite. That was about, $6,000 that I had to pay for. And then you need to start applying to these private schools, because by then I knew I couldn't be helped any further in public school. So there's an application fee for every single school, which can be anywhere between $50 to $150. Most of them said no, because they can pick and choose what type of student they want. So a lot of them, once they see the ADHD as a comorbidity, they axe the application. But then once you get selected, you have to give a deposit fee, which can be anywhere between $1,000 to $5,000. If you're lucky enough that you can get what they call the Connor seat, where they say you financially don't have the ability to pay the remaining balance of the $70,000, we will wait for payment from the Department of Education. Then you have to litigate for the balance. By the way, it takes the Department of Education about 2 years to pay out the tuition. So many schools don't have a lot of seats because they can't wait 2 years to get their payments. But by the time I am filing my second lawsuit for the following year, the first year is still working its way through the system to either get litigated, get settled, and get payment. And it's a habitual cycle of craziness.
So let me jump in and just say thank you for that. So first of all, you got to know what you're up against. Most school systems don't want you. Okay, that's a very cynical approach. Most school systems are not incentivized to identify your child. I think that's more appropriate. Okay, not incentivized. So they'll spin you up, delay. Next month we have a meeting. And before you know it, the kid is in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Then you get tired of the kid drop out or something. They just wait you out because it's a money game, right? So this is and I'm glad we're recording this. I want to get this on tape. See, this is the game. You have a legal right to a free and appropriate public education. That's a right. Right. And if the schools cannot provide that, they are legally responsible. The public schools, they're legally responsible for ensuring you get it somewhere else. So that means that if your school doesn't help a child, if the child has dyslexia, they don't know what to do, the school district has to pay to send them to what they call a non-public school. They have to pay the tuition. They have to pay the transportation. Now, they're going to make you sign a non-disclosure agreement so you don't tell the rest of them what it is. Okay. And so if you have an education attorney, or somebody that knows the system, or you're friends with the superintendent or whatever, but most kids and most families don't know the game. They don't even know that they have a right to that. And so when the school system says, well, we can't, we're working on it, we're doing the best we can, the parents say, well, okay, do better. Not knowing that they have the right, especially if you have an IEP, forget about it. That's federal. That is power in your hands. And then many of us don't want to have a child in quote unquote special ed because there's a stigma attached. We got to get over that. That's power in your hand. That IEP at 504, now they got to jump when you say jump. I'm just tell it like it is. So these non-public schools, they're anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 a pop. They don't want to know. Imagine if all the kids who weren't being served in traditional public school, the district had to pay for them to go to non-public school. They don't want people to know about that. So I just want to put that on record. It's tough to get those things are expensive. So you said, Bob, I spent, I don't know, $10,000 to $12,000. I had to sell my car. I had a 64 and a half Mustang. It was pretty, but that's my baby girl. You understand? She's prettier. That's my heart. You know what I'm saying? We're going to figure this out. You either going to save your child or you're not. You can't wait on the school system. You have to push them to advocate for your child. And so, but with that, we're able to get the neuropsych, the testing and all that expensive stuff, but it was worth every penny because now, you know, when she was able to get the testing, and her thing was, what she said was, I thought I was just stupid. That's what she said. Come find out, it was a neurological processing difference. And then she had some strengths. The neuropsych laid out a street. She's like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, that's me. The good stuff. And all of a sudden, the fog lifted. The fog lifted. And she's been doing great ever since. She still gets on my nerves, but she, you know, at least it demystified things. Think about the children all around us. Their parents aren't at this conference. They don't know what's going on. They just think something's wrong with them. Not that they have a problem, they think they are a problem. And they end up going all kind of ways sideways, behaviorally, culturally. It comes out in other ways. Kids act up for a reason. So I just wanted to just lay that out there too.
And, you know, and that brings to the point, that's, you know, the reason I made this film was, think about this loss of potential.
Yeah.
You know, we have these incredible, amazing kids. And, you know, that's the beauty of this conference is neurodivergent learners have so much to give to our society. And, you know, when you think in a different way, you learn in a different way, you know, it is going to change our society by bringing those children up. You know, in the film, one of our moms, Fatima, says, what if the cure to cancer is in a dyslexic brain? We'll never know, because you are not allowing these children to reach their potential. And there is so much potential there. I mean, you would change basically leadership roles. And I think that's what the message that we want to get across.
Forget the formatting for a second. I don't know what happened with that, but look at those names on there. Presidents, people who've done great things. So it's not as if the kids can't, you know, they call MIT, what do they call it? Like the dyslexia hub or something, because so many people at MIT have dyslexia. NASA recruits
50%
yeah,
of NASA
recruits from there
50% are dyslexic.
It's not so much that it forces you to think different. Your processing is not what you got, is how you use it that counts. You're forced to use different strengths and sharpen different skills to compensate, and you learn stamina. Boy, you better learn stamina and stick-to-itiveness. There are some things that can develop that are valued, but people all around us. So it's not a death sentence. You just need help. You need help, and you gotta have it. And if the school system doesn't give it, I'm here to tell you, mom, dad, somebody's got to be a champion for that child, and you got to go hard. You're dealing with institutional forces that don't want to yield. They don't even want the stigma of being deficient. And while they go on to their next life or their next career job, whatever, you have to be willing not to be liked to advocate for your child or whoever you're championing. You're not going to get invited to the whatever, the meeting, the gathering, the PTA club. You're going to be the outsider. They're not going to ask you to drive to the field trip. They're not going to ask you. You're not going. The PTA. They're not going to like you. You got to be okay with that. It's your child against the world. That I hate to be so crass, but I need to say that, because as parents and educators, you're parentis locus. You're the parent of the moment. That's legally parentis locus. Somebody has got to be a champion for children. And so we have to keep that mindset. It's hard war, easy peace. If you do right by my child, I'll be your best friend and advocate. I'll refer you and nominate you for awards and all the rest. But if it's on, it's on. It's my child above all else. And we have to have that mindset as advocates and parents advocating for children.
Do we have to, are we going to questions from the audience? What, I think we've derailed from our our agenda, and we're happy to do absolutely anything. So, okay, whatever works. If we want questions from the audience, we always absolutely love hearing from
Read the questions, or you want to pass the mic around? What you want to do?
You want to read the question?
Oh, you don't pass the mic? Yeah, that's probably smart. It might not come back.
You want to give this to down the line?
There's also good ones online.
Yeah. So one of the first ones that came in from online was, how do you think public dyslexia schools can be introduced to the entire country, or integrate instruction for dyslexia in general schools?
Who was it for?
Any of you?
Well, I look at how hard they had to work to get that school open. I mean, Naomi can speak to it. That's not an easy stare. Like, they had to really dig in deep to get that done. I don't think that's realistic. Those women did a special thing, and it's possible. It shows what's possible, but more so, it shows what's needed, which is these practices are needed to be normalized across the country. So my focus is on making the schools that we have do the right thing. As far as making new schools all across the country that serve dyslexic students, Naomi, you may want to speak to that in terms of how feasible that is, but that's not my focus.
The truth is, the reason we fought, and I just want to give you some context. Individually, every single one of us at LAC has an individual story with our own children that led us to that point. So, by that point, when this was happening back in 2020 and the women were working towards this school, my then 20-year-old had completely bottomed out of high school and was on the road to get his GED, and it was in the middle of the pandemic and everybody was remote learning, and that literally remote learning was what I saw how hard it was for my youngest, and that was the impetus of what started my journey to get him to the school that he's currently in, because I saw how hard it was. It was the first time I saw how hard it was, and it drained me. I was exhausted, and I knew if I didn't do anything, I was going to fail him. But I would tell you, from the advocacy point to the school opening, it took us 5 years. And just like Kareem mentioned prior, you have to, when you take on this role, you are going to be labeled, ostracized, and often dismissed, because you become that parent, you become that problem. The reason you saw me in the film accosting, approaching, and there's tons of additional hours that Anna did not show. The reason I have such a deep Rolodex is because when I was on my school board, which is what it refers to as a community education council, I became that parent, that advocate that got to know everyone, and I had everyone's email and I had everyone's cell phone number. And the minute I have you in my phone, you are mine. So when it came time to get people to line up behind us, it was really easy for me to make phone calls, and they knew that, I came from a space of really wanting to do this. But I think it's really important that if we're going to talk, our hope is that these schools wouldn't need to exist, that we can do these practices across all schools and we wouldn't have to be here. But there is a subset of students that need it with more repetition and intentionality. So that is why these schools were created.
Another great question. And thank you. That was, thank you for fighting for this. What are 3 strategies you all implement to help improve your students' reading levels? So either of you.
I can do it. They run the school, so better.
Okay.
Is that
Naomi?
for me? Is that for Kareem? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. So, when we created our schools, we just don't think about the literacy aspect. It is, like I said prior, a 360 approach. So what we looked at the private school model, and Windward School is actually one of our partner schools in this process. So they've allowed to create the training modules that we do over the summer and actually all year round. But what we do is we do the 90-minute daily reading and writing block. That is critical because most schools in their schedule do not have the ability to bake in a dedicated 90-minute reading and writing block with a small group of kids. So that in itself has been proven to be really helpful for the student and for the teacher, because let's be real, when you're a teacher trying to teach all these kids at the same time and who's at different places in their reading capacity, it is really hard to get them all together on the same pace. Another piece that really has been fruitful is the way that we've supported our teachers in their training. So while every single teacher that works at our LAC schools does a 5-week summer practicum where they are working with a teacher mentor that has practiced this already. And those 5 weeks has proven to be really thoughtful for them because it's low stakes. No one's judging them. They're learning new skills. So when they show up in the classroom, like Kareem mentioned, you are now successful in your practices. Another piece that we do is also the social emotional piece, because students don't have the vocabulary to say, I'm struggling this morning because I'm deregulated because of X, Y, and Z. So we are teaching them we are using an approach in our curriculum with the social emotional aspect so they can name what their body's feeling, and we give them a menu of options so they can pick from that. So if you need to sit in a room that is, with waves in the background and twinkle lights for 10 minutes, you can do that. Or if you just need to go get a drink of water and walking up and down the stairs, you can do that too. So that way they know there's adults in the room that care about them, that they have skills, and they can call and they can start self-advocating for themselves.
Thank you, Naomi. I'm so sorry to cut you off. Our panel time is wrapping up, but if you would like to continue the conversation with us, please follow us in person to breakout room 203, 204, and online, please click on the Zoom link provided in CVent or in the chat. If you would like to attend the next session, the Human Rights Panel, please just stay in this room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.